And welcome back to another episode of the Chips Podcast. Tyler Melito alongside Ryan Amick once again. Ryan, how are you, sir?
Doing great. How about you?
You know, I can't complain because we took a long hiatus between episodes 8 and episodes 9, and now we're doing episode 10. Since quarantine, this is our 10th episode, Ryan, which is insane.
Back to back, too.
I know, back to back.
Episode 9 yesterday. We couldn't wait for part 2. We thought we'd give it to you earlier. Yeah,
hopefully you watched episode 9. Episode 9 was part 1 of this 2-part episode we're doing of the booms and busts of the last decade in fantasy football. So last episode was 2010 to 2015. If you haven't watched that episode, the link will be down below in the description, along with the rest of the episodes of the Chips Podcast, because let's be real, they're a great watch. I know they're long, but you know what? We're still in quarantine. It's summertime. Just sit outside, get a nice cold beverage, and hang out. Listen to two knuckleheads talk about sports. So today, though, we'll finish off the last decade of fantasy football booms and busts, 2016 to 2019, and then we'll also give our 2020 projections for booms and busts, some guys we think will be there. So, Ryan, without further ado, 2016, you ready to get rolling?
Absolutely. Let's get right into it. So, 2016, we have a couple running backs to talk about. LeGarrette Blount, for one, his first year with the Patriots. He had an ADP of 93 that year, so not too many expectations for him. He had somewhat big years with the Bucs. He was known more for his finishes in the red zone. That's where he got a lot of his points, and that was surely the case in 2016. He finished 9th in fantasy points for running backs that year, based pretty much just on his touchdown production, which was a big mark for him, and I think his best fantasy performance to date. Then also Jordan Howard, undrafted in the drafts. Nobody knew about him. I think undrafted in not only the NFL draft, fantasy drafts as well. And he ended up finishing 10th in running backs right behind LeGarrette Blount. So a couple guys no one really had on their boards that had top 10 performances of the season. Also another notable running back most people probably never even heard of, Dolphins' Jay Ajayi.
Yeah.
His year where he kind of exploded onto the scene. And it's kind of funny, he was the 11th running back in points. So 9 through 11, nobody really drafted them, but they finished pretty well when it was all said and done.
100% agree with you there. For me, another guy who probably wasn't taken in a whole lot of drafts, but was the best player in fantasy football by far in 2016, David Johnson. Team saver. If you took him, I took him with a late round pick to be my second running back. It was him or Eddie Lacy. I think I made the right choice. Eddie Lacy fell off a cliff after 1.5 good seasons in Green Bay. Just couldn't keep his weight down. But Johnson, number 1 in PPR by almost 30 points. Only player to score more than 400 points in fantasy with 407.8, 1,239 rushing yards, 16 rushing touchdowns. Insane right there alone. And then not to mention 80 catches, 879 yards, and 4 receiving touchdowns. Great for a PPR player. And in his rookie season, because this was his second year, 2016. So his rookie year, he had 581 rushing yards, 457 receiving, 12 total touchdowns. So just really took his game to next level. Went from 53rd to number 1, talking about a boom. And that started a series of, for me at least, where I wanted David Johnson every draft. I took him in 2016, couldn't get him in 2017, which we'll talk about a little bit later because a little preview there, if you will. Took him in 2018, I took him in 2019. Haven't had the same luck since 2016, but still, big boom there. Dak Prescott was my other boom. You could have gone with Zeke because he and Zeke had breakout years as rookies, but Zeke was the 4th overall pick in the draft. So people thought, okay, he's going to have a big impact. But here comes Dak, a guy who is expected to be the backup to Tony Romo, but he balls out, wins Offensive Rookie of the Year for the league, leads the Cowboys to the playoffs. It wasn't for Aaron Rodgers and Jared Cook hooking up on a remarkable catch down the sideline. The Cowboys probably could have at least won 1 playoff game. 286.9 PPR points, 15th overall, 6th amongst quarterbacks, 19th in passing yards with 3,667, 16th in touchdowns with 23, and only had 4 interceptions. And remember the first few weeks, everyone was going crazy about Dak. Stephen A. Smith, I think, was losing his mind about Dak Prescott. Had 282 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns as well. Were on the ground, which added another level to him as a fantasy quarterback. Came out of nowhere, and here we are in 2020. He might be the 3rd best quarterback in fantasy behind Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, and he's primed to have a big year this year. And Dak continues the trend that we've seen, especially in the last episode, of rookie quarterbacks who kind of bursted onto the scene, not drafted in many leagues, and then they ended up finishing top 25 in fantasy production. And you look back at 2011, Cam Newton, his rookie year, he's a great performance there. 2012 had the trifecta, RG3, Andrew Luck, and Russell Wilson, as we mentioned. 1 year, I think Blake Bortles might have been his second year, first year, something like that. Came out of nowhere and produced well. Now you talk about Dak Prescott, 2016, carrying the tradition of rookie quarterbacks who just kind of steal the show. And look at some of the busts for that year. There were a lot of injuries to take note of.
Big time.
Most notably, I'd say probably Adrian Peterson. After his 1-game suspension year, he only played 3 games the next year. After having an ADP of 11th in most drafts, pretty disappointing there. Again, Jamal Charles, ADP of 20th, only played 3 games, just continued to get injured year after year. Keenan Allen, another one. This was a bad year for him. He had pretty high hopes. He had a good season, a boom kind of season the year before. So he had an ADP of 14th, but only played 1 game before getting injured. And also, you mentioned him a little bit, Eddie Lacy. Not only was it weight management, but injuries he dealt with. He was a top 25 pick in this year and only played 5 games, barely finished in the top 250 in points. So a lot of injuries to notable first and second round players in this draft.
Yeah, big time indeed. You just rattle off another guy who I had that was injured during the season. Dak Prescott's supposed to be number 1 target, Des Bryant, after playing in just 9 games in 2015, where he only had 89.1 PPR points. People thought he would bounce back big in 2016, which simply was not the case. I picked Dez to be a backup wide receiver, and it really just did not work out for me. So I worked out with David Johnson, did not work out with Dez. He had 50 catches, 796 yards, 8 TDs, and 180 PPR points, ranking 93rd overall. And he was not even the highest scoring receiver on his team. That's how big of a flop he was. Cole Beasley had 189 PPR points, ranking him 84th in fantasy football. It sucks for Dez because he should be on an NFL roster at this point and just hasn't gotten the opportunity. And this 2016 was the beginning of the end for him. Another guy.
Cole Beasley got most of those on third downs too.
That's true. Pretty
much all his production. And he's one of the most deadliest receivers I've ever seen on third downs. I mean, you're never safe no matter what the down and distance is. If you have Cole Beasley on your team, you got to watch out.
Yeah, and fantasy experts, they just don't like Cole Beasley because he's not a big play guy. Right, he's not. But he gets the job done in a PPR league. He gets those catches and gets those timely yards. Another guy for me who was a flop was Theo Riddick. That's a name from the past. I'm sure you might remember, maybe not. I know you're not a big Lions fan at all. And I will say, Riddick was never one of those guys who had a monster year and then tanked the next season. But it always seemed like there were expectations of him to be a solid flex option. It's just like one of those guys on that Detroit Lions roster at running back, whether it be him or Amir Abdullah, Reggie Bush when he was there earlier in the decade. Just someone was expected to perform really, really well, and none of them ever did. Riddick, 110th in fantasy with 161.8 PPR points in 2016. His one saving grace was that he had 5 receiving touchdowns on 53 catches, but that's not going to get the job done. And the biggest killer was that he had more receiving yards than rushing yards. And remind you, he's a running back, 371 to 357. It was a total flop if you took Theo Riddick. And I'm sure a lot of people did.
Yeah, he was just one of the many Lions running backs who throughout the past couple of decades has failed to perform well for the Lions. I don't think they've had a 1,000-yard rusher until a couple years ago, named blanking on his name.
Kerryon Johnson.
Kerryon Johnson. That was the first 1,000-yard rusher they had since Barry Sanders.
I still don't know if that's 100% sure. That could be wrong. I might be thinking of a different team.
No, it's the Lions.
The Lions?
Yeah, they've had very bad rushers ever since they had one.
Them and the Colts.
Ever since they had one of the greatest of all time. Yeah, Colts up there too. I think Marlon Mack got a 1,000-yard season actually, which is kind of surprising.
Close, yeah.
Break that mold. But moving on to 2017, looking at some of the booms for that year. Alvin Kamara, his rookie year, ADP of 147. I remember he was going in the late rounds. He was just kind of a flyer for there in New Orleans. But he ended up finishing 4th total in PPR points that year. So big boom for him in that category. Then also you could look at Mark Ingram, who had an ADP of 61st. So
his
two
teammate.
running backs. Yeah, they two-headed monster there in New Orleans. He had an ADP of 61. So, not like He's getting drafted in most leagues, just not very high, but he finished 14th in points. And it's just pretty impressive when you have two players at the same position for the same team, especially running back, where it's kind of sometimes you have committee, but most of the time you have to get a lot of the bulk of the carries to put up top 15 points in fantasy. But the Saints got it done this year. And then not to mention they had Drew Brees as well, so their offense was killing
And can't guard Mike.
And was that the year he got drafted, or maybe
I believe that was his rookie
might have been
year.
his
Maybe.
rookie year. So that was the start of things to come.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately for them, they haven't gotten it done in the postseason. But in regular season, they've been one of the most exciting teams to watch for sure. And a lot of that, especially in 2017, had to do with their two stud fantasy running backs.
Yeah, 100% agree there. I also had Alvin Kamara as a boom guy. Rookie year performed an exceptionally high level. You mentioned his ADP, number 3 running back in PPR, number 4 overall. And he only started 3 games. And you mentioned Mark Ingram. Imagine if Kamara did not have to compete for all the touches that he did with Ingram, because he only had 728 rushing yards. Where he really made his fantasy impact was in the receiving game. He had 13 total touchdowns, which helps immensely. But he had 826 receiving yards, and I think he had at least 40 catches, if I'm not mistaken off the top of my head. I don't remember. But if he wasn't competing with Ingram, he easily could have been number 1 player in fantasy that season. He probably could have well surpassed the 350-point mark because he had 320.4 PPR points. Straight baller, and he has dominated ever since. He had a down year in 2019, which is slightly concerning, but I think he'll bounce back.
And also considering he was a rookie, I mean, he didn't get a bunch of touches right away. He had to wait a couple weeks before he got a full load there. So, yeah, he easily could have been number 1 in fantasy if it was his backfield from the start, as you were saying.
100% agree. Another guy who had a boom was also a rookie, Mr. Kareem Hunt. Now, obviously, he's had his off-the-field issues. He's now in Cleveland, being the number 1B, I guess you can say, to Nick Chubb, which is a scary backfield when you think about it. I think Kareem Hunt is the best backup running back in the entire NFL, without question. Maybe Phillip Lindsay, you can make the case for. But his rookie year for the Chiefs, he had an amazing year. Number 4 running back in PPR, just behind Kamara with 295.2, number 9 overall. He was just not expected to be the starter beginning of the year. I think it was like Spencer Ware was in the conversation. There were a few guys. Sharkandrick West, I think, was in that conversation to be the Chiefs running back. And it ended up being Hunt, and that team went on to do some great, great things. 1,327 rushing yards, 8 rushing touchdowns with an additional 455 receiving and 3 receiving touchdowns. So for Hunt and Kamara, 2 guys who could do it in the backfield and in the passing game, for PPR scoring, those guys are dreams. Like, obviously, you would love to have a guy like Adrian Peterson who just runs it down your throat for over 1,000 yards, over 2,000 yards. He did that one season. But guys who can get 800, 900, 1,000 rushing yards, and then an additional 500-600 receiving yards, I'd almost rather have that in PPR scoring because that means they're multi-dimensional.
And you look at the difference between Hunt and Kamara. One of them burst onto the scene in a powerful way, and that was Hunt. Unforgettable debut for them when they went into Foxborough after their celebrating their championship and just shocked the world. Hunt went off that game. He had, I think, at least 40 fantasy points or something like that in his first game and led the Chiefs to a win in Foxborough. So from that moment on, people knew he was for real, and that season showed that in his fantasy production that he was the real deal in Kansas City. Unfortunately, his time just wasn't that long there.
Yeah, and I remember I was in a draft with – this was the first time I was in this big league with some real money on the line. And one of the guys who I've been friends with for a long, long time now, no longer with us, rest in peace, he took Kareem Hunt in like the 2nd or 3rd round. And I'm like, what? Thank you, because that allowed me to get someone of a bigger name. And then Kareem Hunt burst onto the scene. And I'm like, I am a fool for not taking that. But neither here nor there, Kareem Hunt had a baller year. But there are some guys, though, who did not have baller years, Ryan.
Yeah, 2017 wasn't sweet for everybody. A couple names we just mentioned in 2016 went from boom to bust really quickly. First, you look at one of the biggest busts on this list, David Johnson, who you're flaunting over. Did not have a great follow-up to his breakout season. Almost every draft had him going number 1 overall. He's a surefire. He was dual threat running back. Could do it all. He was one of the top finishers in fantasy points last year. So people thought he'd do more or less the same in 2017, but unfortunately a wrist injury cut his season short in week 1. Did not fulfill any of the hype he had going into that season, unfortunately, because of injury. And then someone I mentioned as a boom for 2016, Jay Ajayi, after one great year with the Dolphins, kind of slid off a hill, had an ADP of 14, so a second-round running back, some pretty good expectations. Finished 121st in points, not what you like to see if you drafted Jay Ajayi. Another person of note who his run kind of started to end in 2017 was Jordy Nelson.
Yeah.
Since the beginning of the list that we mentioned in the first episode, he was kind of Aaron Rodgers' go-to guy, had a pretty good career in the 2010s with the Green Bay Packers, but with injuries and just old age, started to take a turn for the worst in 2017, had an ADP of 12th, but finished 118th in points, and soon after would leave the Packers to go to the Raiders and would soon no longer be in the NFL. But this is just the end of the run for Jordy Nelson, and it was a pretty solid career he had. Won a Super Bowl with the Packers, so, what a somewhat bittersweet ending. Yeah.
Yeah, and there have been rumors of Jordy Nelson possibly coming back to Green Bay, given the lack of offensive weapons, to say the least, in Lambeau Field outside of Devontae Adams and I guess you can say Aaron Jones, but I am not high on him at all.
Funny, because we'll get to that later.
Yeah,
we'll there.
Mm-hmm. But I also had David Johnson as a bust. You mentioned the wrist injury. He played in just one game, 23 total yards, and 2 fumbles in that game where he just scored 13 PPR points. Just a guy, like you mentioned, who a lot of people penciled in as a number one, either him, Ezekiel Elliott, or Le'Veon Bell. And that just was not the case. 408th overall in fantasy. Heartbreaking. I didn't have an early pick that year, so I got lucky. Didn't have to worry about. I think I took Zeke. I think I took Zeke at 4, so didn't have to worry about David Johnson.
Suspended?
No, I think this was Zeke. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember, honestly. It was 2017 to 2018. It's been a lot of fantasy football for me in my life. But another guy who did not perform that well was actually Jordy Nelson's quarterback, and maybe this is why Jordy Nelson didn't perform that well. Aaron Rodgers, after being number 2 in PPR scoring in 2016, the number 1 quarterback with 380, he greatly underperformed in 2017. Only played in 7 games in 2017 because of injuries, leading him to throw for just 1,675 yards, 16 TDs, and 6 interceptions, 129.6 PPR points, good enough to be 132nd overall and the number 29 quarterback in fantasy. I mean, a guy who probably was the number 1 quarterback taken in a lot of leagues because he's still at the top of his game at this point and just simply did not pan out.
Yeah, definitely could say that. Moving on to 2018, some of the booms for this year. One of them is boom is an understatement because this man just got the richest contract in NFL history. You know who I'm talking about. One Patrick Mahomes.
I have him on the list.
Rookie quarterback, or not technically rookie quarterback, but his first year starting for Kansas City after they got rid of Alex Smith, gave the rings to Patrick Mahomes. In most drafts, he had an ADP of 121, was around QB 15, so no one's real starter. And this is one of the best picks I ever made because I made the pick. I think this was the only year I ever won fantasy, and it's thank you to Patrick Mahomes.
Yep.
Second round snag. And I remember, I think I had Drew Brees too. So it was so hard picking who do I start because literally
I hated you for it.
It's a sweet victory for me. He was picked QB 15, finished first overall in points that year. We all know the story: 50 touchdowns, 5,000 plus passing yards. Just unbelievable year for his first year as a starter, and was a sign of things to come for what's going to be an illustrious career for Patrick Mahomes. Another great who got his start in 2018 was George Kittle. Tight end of the 49ers. Nobody knew who this guy was. Had an ADP of 140th. No, most likely wasn't drafted in any leagues. And then he finished 3rd in tight end points that year to start of a breakout year. And in the next 2 years, he would solidify himself, or the next year, he would solidify himself as arguably the best tight end in the NFL. And then one more note, another rookie, James Conner, running back for the Steelers, filling the hole for Le'Veon Bell, we'll probably mention in a bit. But with his absence, James Conner plugged in and played very well. He was average draft position of 168th, and he finished 6th for running back points that year. So a great year for James Conner as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. James Conner completely balled out. I have a Kittle. I might take him. I don't usually take tight ends in the first 7 rounds or so. I
He'd be
might have
one I'd take too. Like
he's the one guy.
Like he's a difference maker.
Right.
Especially for the 49ers, they lean so much on him. They don't have the best receiver weapons, especially with losing Emmanuel Sanders.
And
They
Debo
rely a
Samuel with the
lot.
injury.
Yeah, that's right. He's going to be injured for the start of the season. So George Kittle, he's worth it. Of any tight end you want to pick, I would pick him as well.
100% agree. And I think Philip Lindsay, he was a rookie this year. He had over 1,000 rushing yards. So another honorable mention for me. I also had Mahomes, obviously, after riding the bench his first season, first in PPR scoring, 5,097 passing yards, first in TDs with 50, just 12 interceptions. So imagine if he had any fewer, he probably would have had a much larger margin. And I'll be honest, I wanted to take him in my main league. You took him in our league, and I was fine with that. But I wanted to take him in my main league. I waited until like the 10th or 11th round. He was taking a couple of picks before me. I got stuck with Matthew Stafford. And then the same thing happened last season with Lamar Jackson. It was agonizing. It was agonizing. Mm-hmm. So this year I am going to – I think Kyler Murray, I think everyone's now like, oh, he's going to have such great hype around him. And they'll take him early, so I'm not too worried. There's another guy, second-year quarterback, who I'm got my eyes on, to say the least. But, yeah, Mahomes, straight baller. And then another guy who the same draft class as Mahomes, arguably the best running back in football, CMC, Christian McCaffrey. After a solid rookie season where he rushed for 435 yards, 2 TDs, and an additional 80 catches for 651 and 5 touchdowns, he finished number 34 in PPR scoring with 228.6 points. That was 2017. 2018, he took his game to another level. Third in PPR scoring, number 2 running back behind our boy, Saquon, 385.5 points, 1,098 rushing yards, 7 rushing touchdowns to go along with 107 catches as a running back in PPR. That's, like, say 1 point per catch. That's 107 guaranteed right there. 167 receiving yards, 6 receiving touchdowns, a complete breakout, and a guy who took his game to the next level. And to build on that in 2019, 2020, who knows, as the number 1 overall pick, might get even better on a shitty Carolina team. Who knows?
Yeah, he's got to carry the load there for sure. So, I mean, if his back can hold all that weight, we'll see. It looks like he has. I mean, he hasn't dealt with any injuries as of late. He keeps getting better and better. It's hard to exceed expectations when you're the literal number 1 pick in fantasy football. But if anyone could do it, I bet it's CMC. Looking at some of the busts for that year, just mentioned them a little earlier, James Conner, who should have started in front of him, Le'Veon Bell, instead decided to hold out that year.
Everyone took him early.
Of people who drafted somewhat early or just drafted him at all thinking, oh, he'll be back within a couple of weeks. He's not going to hold out the whole year. At an ADP of 3rd. So every single person that took him wasted a first-round pick on someone who didn't touch the gridiron once. So very tough pill to swallow for anyone in 2018 who drafted Le'Veon Bell. And another running back who underperformed. His ADP was pretty low, especially when you're looking at the majority of this list. Royce Freeman hit an ADP of 29th.
But the expectation was high.
The expectation was pretty high, and he finished 170th in points. No injuries or anything. Philip Lindsay just overtook the spotlight there. And Royce Freeman's kind of been buried in the backfield in Denver. Now they have Melvin Gordon. Who knows if Royce is ever going to really see touches for Denver. So
I wouldn't be surprised if he makes the roster.
Career. He might not even make the roster. Honestly, it might be best for him. Maybe he needs a change of scenery where he actually get touches because I don't see any coming to him in Denver. But, yeah, pretty disappointing season for Royce Freeman and Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah, 100% agree. I lucked out. So, yeah, I was just thinking about it. Took Ezekiel Elliott in 2017. Fine. 2018, got back on the David Johnson train. Didn't get Le'Veon. So, good for you. Who took him in our league, by the way? They got so unlucky because I'm sure someone did. I bet it was Navon. I bet it was Navon. 100%.
I thought it might have been Rohan. I don't know.
Probably. So one of those goofballs. Shout out, guys, if you guys want to watch the show. But I didn't have any of those guys on my list. My busts were Greg Olsen. After a flop of year in 2017 where he played 7 games, was 290th PPR scoring, 50th amongst tight ends, scoring 42.1 points. Many people thought he would bounce back. I took him to be my tight end, and that simply did not happen. It was just unfortunate. Because Greg Olsen is one of those guys who's like old faithful. You just always think he's going to perform, and though 2017, 2018, he did not play in 9 games in 2018, 25th in tight end fantasy PPR scoring. That was a mouthful. 211th overall, 80.1 PPR points. Overall, just really disappointing and a massive blow to Carolina's team that year because you had a great season by Christian McCaffrey. Cam Newton was still Cam for the most part, dealt with some injuries. But Greg Olsen just did not perform. So, and now he's in Seattle, so we'll see what he can do there. Another guy who flopped was Leonard Fournette. After a really good rookie season where he finished 33rd in the league in PPR, 9th amongst running backs with 230.2 points. 2018, however, was just not a great year. 146 overall, 120.4 total points, 40th amongst running backs, down from 1,040 rushing yards and 9 TDs in 2017 to 439 and 5 in 2018. Did play in only 8 games versus 13 in 2017, but still significantly worse output and a big-time disappointment. And he might be on the way out of Jacksonville. He had a bounce back 2019, but he might be on the way out. Who knows?
Yeah, they're clearing the locker rooms in Jacksonville. Full-on tank mode there. Got rid of
Jalen Ramsey
the year before. They're trying to get rid of Yannick Ngakoue this offseason.
He's not getting out of there.
Leonard Fournette's also expressed his interest in being traded as well. They're just clearing house in Jacksonville. They want to change the scenery there. Moving to 2019.
Bring the stash, though. Gardner Minshew.
Yes, sir. He's underrated, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, obviously, if you can get someone like Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields, you want to. But Gardner Minshew, he probably won't win them a lot of games because the roster is just awful. But he had some pretty good numbers, and he was pretty efficient last year.
He's kind of like Tebow.
Tebow, I think he's a better passer.
He's a better passer than Tebow, but it's kind of like that aura around him. People just want to see him. They don't really care how the team does.
Funny because no one knew him until this year, but it's the stash, man.
That's true. Stash and the jorts.
But anyways, moving to 2019, I'll let you have the big fish because I have some other names I want to mention for this year.
I'm not getting the big fish, so.
Really? All right, I guess you mentioned him then. Lamar Jackson, MVP of the 2019 season. You mentioned him. You almost drafted him in your league. Most people had him as maybe a backup option, had an ADP of 101 that year. But as we all know, MVP finished first in the league in PPR points and is looking great in Baltimore. Also, some running backs to mention. Aaron Jones, we mentioned at the top of the show. He came pretty much out of nowhere. You have Jamal Williams in Green Bay, and now you have new running back they drafted in this year's draft. So who knows if it'll be the same production. But for this year, he finished second in running back points, which is shocking. A lot of that has to do with his touchdown production that carried the load for him a lot in Green Bay. And another running back who was mainly a backup for this year, but still put up the 4th most running back points in the league, mainly because of receptions, and that's Austin Eckler as part of the LA Chargers. He was running back 30 in most leagues, but he finished top 5, and that was even with Melvin Gordon coming back midway through the season after a little contract holdout.
Yeah, I mean, Eckler, straight ball out. There were concerns with injuries, and then Melvin Gordon coming back, and he held his role the entire time. Aaron Jones, remarkable year, 19 rushing touchdowns. Obviously, that won't be duplicated again in 2020. So I think his ADP is going to be a lot higher this year than it definitely should. So I think he'll be a guy that at least I'll try to stay away from. You could take him by all means. So that means I get the guy I really want. And then obviously Lamar Jackson, remarkable season, not bad for a running back, like he said, after his first game against the Dolphins last season. I mean, what can you say? I hope that he continues this level of play because he is so fun to watch. There's some of the moves that he does, like that one game against Cincinnati where he ran through 2 guys. He is this generation's Michael Vick, and I honestly think he's better than Michael Vick. But I didn't have any of those guys on my booms. I had 2 wide receivers for my booms, and they both went to the same college. A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf, 2 rookie wide receivers. They got a lot of hype for that viral photo of them prior to the draft coming out of Ole Miss, where they're just absolutely jacked muscles, especially Metcalf. He performed immensely well at the combine. They both slid in the draft, however. Metcalf going in the end of the 2nd round. I think Brown went just a little bit before him. Brown finished 62nd in PPR scoring, 21st among wide receivers, 217.1, 52 catches, 1,051 yards, and 8 TDs. just a remarkable season on a Titans team where he had Marcus Mariota and Ryan Tannehill throwing to him most of the time, and the league's leading rusher on that roster in Derrick Henry. So he carved out a nice spot for himself. And then Metcalf, I mean, there was so much hype surrounding him, but no one really knew how big of an impact he'd have. Safe to say he had a monster impact, and he's only going to get better in 2020. 33rd in wide receiver PPR scoring, 87th overall with 187.1, 58 catches, 900 yards, 7 TDs. Both guys played phenomenally for their teams. And I'll be honest, these are two guys who I'm going to target, depending on other bye weeks. But these are two guys that, in terms of wide receivers, I would love to have both of them because I think they're going to be really good for a long time.
Yeah, two great Ole Miss products there. Looking at some of the busts for this year, pretty much if you had any player from the Pittsburgh Steelers roster,
that is true.
Past and present, because you have some of the big names who were on the Steelers for a very long time. Le'Veon Bell, who again is a bust because this year he actually played, which is good news for those who drafted him, but he had an ADP of 9th. He was drafted first in a bunch of leagues.
Way too high.
Which is way too high. He finished 64th for the season, which isn't awful, but it's definitely a reach. Then you have his former teammate, Antonio Brown. Boy, where do we start with this guy? He played
the helmet.
With all the controversy, he only managed to play one game, and that was for the Patriots, which who would have thought at the beginning of the year. He was originally on the Raiders, ended up with the Patriots for one weird game, actually scored a touchdown. But for someone who was drafted 22nd in most drafts, that's not what you want to see from Antonio Brown after putting up top 5 receiver marks for the past decade. And then he just a total fall from grace, and he hasn't recovered. Who knows if he ever will. But then you look at some of the current Pittsburgh Steelers who underperformed, another running back, wide receiver duo. In Juju Smith-Schuster, with AB being gone, he was looked at as the number 1 option in Pittsburgh. Had great seasons prior to that, so some good expectations. Had an ADP of 13th, but with injuries and just lack of performance, Ben Roethlisberger being out, put up 173rd in points, which is not good at all. Not a good year for Juju. Maybe he could bounce back this year. Depends on the health of Big Ben. Depends on if he can stay healthy. It depends on a lot of things. Another player who couldn't stay healthy, James Conner, who was on the boom year before, came out of nowhere, had a great season, put up a lot of touchdowns. Had an ADP of 7th, another first-rounder with high expectations. Finished 128th in points. Not a good season for him as well. So when you're looking at wide receiver running back duos from the Steelers, past and present, last year was not their year at all.
Yeah, and Roethlisberger, not to mention, he got hurt. He was part of that slew of quarterbacks that got hurt early on in the year. He got hurt in week 2, missed the rest of the season. He looks good. If you've seen some of the videos, he might have a bounce back in a decent way in his now age 38 season. But yeah, I'll be honest. I had Juju Smith-Schuster, and he completely underperformed it. I think is one of those things where everyone was baffled as to why, and I think it simply goes down to the quarterback play. Mason Rudolph is not a good NFL quarterback. The Steelers should have signed Cam Newton while they could in case Roethlisberger got hurt. They did not. And now if Roethlisberger gets hurt, they're not making the playoffs. I'm calling it right now. James Conner, another guy like you mentioned, huge expectations, just flopped. Le'Veon Bell on a Jets team, which the signing didn't make sense, at least to me when it first happened. And I think he and Adam Gase just will never see eye to eye. And I think
Gase didn't want him in the first place.
Right. Gase didn't want him in the first place, and that's just going to ruin his season again in 2020. And not to mention Sam Darnold has underperformed in his first couple of years. And then AB, like you mentioned, just horrible circumstances for him, but that was really brought on to himself. And now there are rumors of him possibly rejoining Tom Brady in Tampa. But he had all the opportunity if he just stopped being the egotistical person that he is and just played. If he just played, I don't think anyone would care about the other stuff, but he just simply refused to. None of those guys were a bust, though. I could have gone with my first 3 picks in last year's draft, not in our league, in a different league. OBJ, David Johnson, Juju, because that just was devastating, but I did not because I got a great story. Andrew Luck and Lamar Miller. So a lot of people took Luck to be their quarterback of the year. They just ever thought after a remarkable comeback season in 2017, guys took him early, and they just never saw the field, Luck or Miller. Luck obviously retired right before the season, and I was sitting with an Indianapolis Colts fan in my dorm lounge, and you see the bottom ticker goes off, breaking news, Andrew Luck retires. He collapsed to the floor. It was an utter shock, and everyone else around him was laughing their butts off. And then so many people were forced to scramble, pick up a quarterback, and there were very few successes when given how far Luck was projected to be. Some people got Lamar Jackson, which is kind of lucky, but it just was not the same. And then Miller, on the other hand, a guy that got injured in the preseason and missed the entire year, tore his ACL. And I think that was the same day as Luck retired, if I'm not mistaken. So the same Colts fan took Miller in his draft the night before, and I'm not sure who he's more devastated about, Luck or Miller. It was just not a good day for that guy, but hilarious for everyone else. And this is why, like you said, you don't do your fantasy draft until a couple days before the season starts.
Yeah, it's smart to go about it that way. And it's just, I guess, one's pain is another – what am I trying to say?
One's trash is another man's treasure is what you're trying to say.
Yeah. In a way, that's kind of the same scenario.
Yeah.
But so we just recapped every
quick
in the past that we know has happened. Now let's look ahead to this season, this uncertain season, to say the least. And let's think of some booms and busts of our own of what we think will happen, especially looking at their ADP.
Let's go position by position.
I only have just a couple on my list that I just in general I think should be noteworthy. First, you look at someone like Zach Moss, running back for the Buffalo Bills. He's going very late, so if you want someone who could be a big steal, he has an ADP of 116. Not many people think of Zach Moss when they're thinking of running backs to draft. Obviously, you don't want him as your starter. He's more of a bench stash player, so you will potentially get at later in the year. He is a rookie, so he might not get many touches at the start, especially because they had Devin Singletary, who they drafted last year. But when I think of Moss, I think he could be a great first and second down back because Devin Singletary did most of his damage in the passing game last year. And I feel like they drafted him pretty high. I think it was their third pick. It wasn't a third-round pick, but they had their third pick they drafted on him. So they did it for a reason. They want to use this guy. He's a ground-and-pound type of guy. He had some pretty high praises out of Utah in his collegiate season and was one of the better running backs in the draft. And as we noted in this video, a lot of rookie running backs have had great seasons to start, like Kareem Hunt, like an Alvin Kamara, like a James Conner type. And even if you look to last year with the Raiders.
Saquon Barkley, too.
He was more expected, but, I mean, just even guys who were drafted late, like as I mentioned with Zach Moss, he could just be someone who no one thinks about, and then maybe come week 6 he starts getting real touches and makes an impact for your fantasy team. Another player who is pretty young, he was drafted last year, David Montgomery for the Bears. They need some source of offensive power in the Bears locker room. So much uncertainty with the quarterback situation. Really, the only weapon they have is Allen Robinson. But when you look at the running back position, I think he's usurped Tariq Cohen in terms of touches. He had some pretty good numbers last year. A little disappointing for people like me who drafted him, but I think he could have a bounce-back year. He's a mid to late round pick this year, so if you want someone who could have some value, I think David Montgomery could be that type of guy. And another running back, he's drafted in around second to third round, so more people know about him. But he was just so tremendous last year, and I don't see how he can get any worse. I think he only could go sky limit from here. Austin Eckler, I mean, he had to share the backfield with Melvin Gordon last year, and he still finished top 4 in running back points, which is absolutely crazy. A lot of that was through the air, which I think will continue for him. Now he can get some points on the ground as well. And with Tyrod Taylor there, I feel like he'll be a check down option for him. And I think Austin Eckler can only get better from here. He could easily be top 3 running back, maybe even number 1. I see him as a Christian McCaffrey type back, or he could do it on both ends. And in a PPR league, receptions are very valuable. He got a ton of those last year, almost 100 in limited time playing. So keep an eye out for Austin Eckler.
Yeah, I somewhat agree with you. I think with David Montgomery, he's a guy – the only options, like you said, are Allen Robinson, and they're like 11 tight ends they have on the roster. So there just needs to be something there, especially after the flop of year Tariq Cohen had as well. So Bears could use that. I'm actually not as high on Austin Eckler as you are. I think he's going to bust, but I'll explain more a little bit later. And who is your third guy? Wow. Poor?
Zach Moss.
Yeah, Zach Moss. I think the interesting thing with the rookie running backs, you got him, DeAndre Swift, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jonathan Taylor, amongst others. I think with this weird offseason, I really don't expect rookie running backs or rookie receivers or even the rookie quarterbacks to be huge fantasy impacts unless they're on a really bad team. So I don't see the big projections. I would like to see Moss prove me wrong because I think he's a great talent, but I'm a little weary on that. For me, here's what I'll go. I'll do one quarterback, one running back, one wide receiver, and one tight end. My one quarterback who I think is going to boom, I'm going to go Drew Lock. I think he's got all this talent around him. Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Phillip Lindsay, Melvin Gordon, Noah Fant, KJ Hamler, a good offensive line. The sky's the limit for him. I think he's got all the swagger in the world. I think that will carry over immensely well for him. One running back who I think is going to boom, I'm going to go with his teammate, Phillip Lindsay. The guy, I've done a plethora of mock drafts. Locke has not been taken at all, unless it's by me. Lindsay, he's been taken around the 10th or 11th round, maybe a little earlier, depending on the draft. But he's not expected to do much. The guy's rushed for 1,000 yards twice. And if Melvin Gordon gets hurt, Phillip Lindsay is going to be a great plug-and-play guy. He'll be a great handcuff, and Kareem Hunt will be great handcuffs for the season. I will definitely target both of them. Wide receiver, it's one of three guys for me. And I know they're taken relatively early, but still, A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, or DJ Moore. All three of these guys are young receivers for the future who have a lot of potential. And I think they'll be their number one options on their respective teams. Brown in Tennessee, Metcalf in Seattle, and Moore in Carolina. So I think all three of those guys could be big-time booms, and I'll definitely try to take at least one, maybe even two of them if I can. And then the tight end, who I think is going to be a big boom. And I don't know why I'm now telling you this. I'm realizing if we're in the same fantasy league because you're going to steal my picks. But Hayden Hurst out of Atlanta, that team, Matt Ryan, a quarterback, Todd Gurley in the backfield, Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones on the outside. Look at Austin Hooper last year. He was the number one tight end in fantasy up until he got hurt. Hayden Hurst, I think, has the same potential. The red zone opportunities will be there. I think he could have a monster breakout season. And then don't be surprised if Gronk has a big year too. I know he's still a big name, but he's just coming off retirement. He's not projected to be a top 5 tight end. I think he could sneak in there if he and Tom Brady connect well early on.
Yeah, I like a lot of your picks there. One that was very notable to me is Drew Lock. I definitely agree with you. I should have had him on my list. I don't know why I didn't think of him because I definitely think he's going to break out this year. I mean, he's set to succeed definitely in Denver. I mean, they put so many weapons around him. And you look at a chain of events in the past couple of years, I don't think he's going to be on their type of level. But Mahomes had his first year kind of off until the very end, then bursting onto the scene his second year. Lamar Jackson they benched him half the year. Then he started to play at the back end of his rookie season. Next year exploded. They kind of did the same with Drew Lock. They didn't play him until the very end of the season. I don't remember what the record was, but they had a winning record for sure, and he played very well, very confidently, and they think he is the guy for sure in Denver. After they were looking for someone to replace Peyton Manning with Paxton Lynch, with Trevor Siemian, with all these guys who didn't pan out at all.
Joe Flacco, Chase Keenum.
And you look at Drew Lock, and I think with all the weapons they put around him, I think this Denver Broncos offense is going to be elite, and I think Drew Lock's going to get a lot of fantasy football points because of it. Looking at some of the busts for this year, I look at more running backs. I was running back heavy on my predictions. I probably should diverse my portfolio a little bit there. But we mentioned his name a lot. We were alluding to this. Aaron Jones, ADP of 19th. I just don't see it happening again. I didn't see it at all happening last year. I was in shock because he had a pretty high ADP last year. I remember he was like 4th, 5th round guy. I was like, really? Like, has this guy really done anything to be drafted that high? He showed me wrong last year for sure. And he could easily do the same this year because they haven't added many weapons to that offense. And you still have Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur has definitely proven that he likes to run the ball. But as we mentioned, they drafted a running back out of Boston College this year. They still have Jamal Williams and him as well. They lost Brian Bulaga on the offensive line. And I just don't think he could put up 12-plus touchdowns or whatever it was again in the season.
19 total touchdowns.
19, right. It might have been rushing, but 19 total touchdowns. I don't see that happening again. I think he'll still be good. He'll still be the leading back on that team. I just think ADP of 19 is a little high. And then another person I like, but I just think his ADP is very high, is Kenyon Drake. ADP of 8th. He's a first-round running back. Really? I mean, He was very well. He was one of the top backs in the league in the bottom half of the season last year. But I think the expectations are just a little high for him. He never did much in Miami. Once he got a change of scenery, he did very well. So maybe that could be something. And he's in a pretty high-octane offense with Cliff Kingsbury. Now so many weapons for Kyler Murray. There's just less pressure on everybody. So I can see him doing well. I just think based on the draft position, it's asking a lot of him because he also another product of touchdown inflation. Like a lot of what fantasy, a lot of the points come to is touchdowns. So if you can't repeat the touchdown mark, it's pretty hard to repeat your performance of last year like Kenyon Drake. So I think they'll both do well. I just think, maybe they shouldn't be first, second round backs because there's a lot of other backs that come to mind that could definitely beat them in terms of points.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think with the running backs this year, there's your top 5 or so guys in McCaffrey, Barkley, Elliott, Kamara. Maybe you could throw in Henry and Cook. Those are your top 6.
Chubb.
Maybe you could throw in Chubb. But then you could say Chubb, Mixon, Drake, Josh Jacobs, and Aaron Jones are in that second tier. Now, the guys in that second tier, if I had to choose between Drake, Jones, and Josh Jacobs, give me Josh Jacobs all day long. Eckler is in that conversation too, I guess you could say.
Eckler is also, I like Edwards-Helaire for the Chiefs. I mean,
too much of a reach.
Like in this,
I'm not taking a rookie running back unless it's a backup.
I know he's a rookie running back, but he's the first option for one of the best offenses in the league. And, I mean, look at Kareem Hunt. He was a rookie running back in that Chiefs offense. That was without Patrick Mahomes, too. And
that's true.
Set the world on fire. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire did a lot in the passing game, which is huge for this Chiefs team who obviously do a lot in the passing game. And, I mean, Damian Williams did pretty well last year, and he's not a very good back. I think Edwards-Helaire is a good back, and I could see big things for him. He is projected to go pretty high. He's like a 3rd, 4th round pick. But I think like Eckler, when you're a dual threat kind of back like that, I think it pays dividends and it's worth the high pick.
I agree with you in that regard. I just don't know for a rookie running back, it might be just too early. I'm not willing to take the risk, especially in the 3rd or 4th round where I'll probably go running back to start. I'd rather get a 3rd running back of someone a little bit more known commodity, of someone like a James Conner, a Leonard Fournette, or Todd Gurley, somewhere along those lines. But for me, my bust of a quarterback, I think it's going to be – I don't want to say Lamar Jackson, although he's going to regress. He and Mahomes are both going to regress. I'm going to go with Deshaun Watson. People are taking him to be about like the 4th or 5th quarterback in most drafts, maybe 6th behind Russell Wilson and Dak. But the loss of DeAndre Hopkins is going to be huge. Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks can't stay healthy. Kenny Stills is not a number 1 receiver. If David Johnson's healthy, okay, you got a nice receiving back out of the backfield, but there's just too much pressure on Deshaun Watson, and there's just not enough options around him to throw to. I'm not a big fan of him. I mean, if he's there, I would consider taking him, but it really have to be who are my other options, because Deshaun Watson is a hard sell for me. Running back, Jones and Drake, I'm not super high on, but I'm not high on Eckler at all. I just think I think he's a one-year wonder. I think he benefited from having Melvin Gordon as kind of like an extra piece there, someone who could limit some of the damage he can do. I just don't know about Eckler. And the injuries are a big concern for me too. We saw a hint of that last season. Wide receivers, OBJ is one. People are saying he's going to boom back once again. I'm not 100% sure, but I think the guy who's going to flop most is Devontae Adams. A lot of people are taking him as a number 2 wide receiver. There's just no one else for him to throw to, Aaron Rodgers, outside of Devontae Adams. So teams are just going to double cover him. I wouldn't be sorry if someone's like a Marquez Valdez-Scantling or an Alan Lazard. Yeah, Alan Lazard. That's the guy's name. Have big boom years for Green Bay as the number 2 receiver because everyone's going to be focusing their attention on Adams. Tight end, for me, Darren Waller. I am out on him. He is overrated, overhyped. Do it again this season, and then maybe I'll be on board. Also, George Kittle. I know I said earlier that I would love to take him, but with Deebo Samuel going to be hurt with that foot injury, who knows how that will impact him. You got Raheem Mostert now asking for a trade from the 49ers, so that's another one less running back on that monster unit that they have. Jimmy Garoppolo, I'm not 100% sold on him. that's going to affect Kittle big time. And I think people are starting to catch on how good he is. So they're going to try to do anything in their power, similar to Gronk, to just hit him as hard as they can. And that could lead to injuries and Kittle probably not thriving as much as people think.
All right, so that rounds out our 2016 to 2020 boom or bust fantasy players. Now it's time for a little trivia.
Let's do a little trivia.
Being prepared this fine Wednesday night. Forgot the date a little bit. So my question to you, Tyler, who has scored the most fantasy points in a single game?
In a single game? Okay, I got worried because I have very similar to that question. Single game. Is it this decade?
Yes.
And PPR?
I believe so. I found different sources with different answers.
Wait, hold on. Is it a quarterback? That's the best.
I would assume it's PPR because it's more points than like if it was this amount of points and it wasn't PPR, that'd be absurd. So I think it is.
Most points this decade. Is it a quarterback?
It's not.
It's not a quarterback. Is it Christian McCaffrey?
No, it's not as recent.
Who is it?
Jamal Charles, actually. 2.5 fantasy points in a single game, which is how many my team gets sometimes. So that's pretty scary. He gets 62 points in a single game. But Jamal Charles did so.
Hey, he was a bad man, to quote our boy Stephen A. Smith. Yeah. So my question is similar along those lines. What was the best PPR season in history?
So season. All right.
Season.
Is it quarterback?
It is not a quarterback.
Not a quarterback. Is it recent too? Like, is it this decade?
No, it is. It's not this decade.
Is it Marshall Faulk?
It is not Marshall Faulk. He is number 2. The answer would be actually Mr. LaDainian Tomlinson, 420.5 in 2006, the year he broke the single-season touchdown record for a non-quarterback, if I'm not mistaken. But, Ryan, that concludes this episode of the Chips podcast. Any final remarks that you want to make before we close things out?
Pretty successful 2-podcast run, I'd say. Pretty interesting topic. Got me excited for the fantasy football season.
Yeah.
Hopefully we still have the season, normal scheduled time, September 17th. Chiefs versus Texans.
17th?
I think so. Or is it the 7th?
No. It's like the 5th. The 5th or the 10th.
7th. I know there's a 7 in it. That's why I thought it was 17th. But either way, hopefully it goes as scheduled.
Come on, Ryan.
I'm really excited for the NFL season. So.
But, yeah, I 100% agree. Maybe if we do a fantasy draft this year, we have an episode and we just talk about the fantasy league that we're in. That would be kind of fun. But now that we've done this, sports are coming back. NBA later this month. MLB a couple weeks away. Training camp starts soon. Hockey, I think, starting. MLS soon. Golf is on. Golf. Yes. I mean, it's a great time for sports. Great episode, 2-parter. Thank you all so much for watching. Leave your comments down below. We love listening to your feedback, although, let's be real, we don't get a lot of comments, so we'll take anything. Any feedback is good feedback. For Ryan Amick, I'm Tyler Melito. Thank you all so much for watching once again. Have a great day, and we will see you next time.